4-1. I was the only dissenting judge. And he said the only way to fix it is the Constitution. And you're the only person I knew to take this to. Maybe you can do something about it. And I thank the Lord that I was there that day for Him to give me that opinion. I went back up to my office and I opened the envelope and I began to read how our court said that the Constitution protected the right to kill the unborn. And I resolved that day in my heart that I would do whatever it took that I needed to do as a legislator to reverse that opinion. And in January, I filed what is now known as Amendment 1 that you'll have the opportunity to begin voting on October the 15th. And on Election Day, November the 4th. It has been a 13-year journey to the ballot. And I want to tell you a little bit more about that in just a moment so that you go out of here fully equipped to advocate for that amendment. But my third little story is this. As I listened to Dr. Grant's story, I remember about 4 years ago, I went to the National Memorial for the Unborn in Chattanooga. And I went with the director of the Crisis Pregnancy Center that actually operates in the place where the abortion clinic in Chattanooga used to operate. If you've never been there, let me encourage you to swing off the freeway in Chattanooga and go. It's open 24 hours a day. And there is a wall with little plaques on it, and people can buy plaques to put little remembrances to acknowledge the fact that there was a child. And I stood in front of that wall and I saw the little notes that had been written by parents and by fathers and by grandparents. I saw flowers and I read, I didn't know, I didn't understand. I didn't realize. I look forward to holding you in heaven. And to be honest, I just began to sob. Because really in that moment, what I knew intellectually really did become a reality for me, even as your own situation. So I thought, there are not only just the unborn, there are all these people who come here in the cloak of midnight, not wanting to be seen, with the pain of their own situation, to try to acknowledge the loss, and to deal with their guilt or their shame, or to express their own sense that I have been forgiven and I look forward to seeing you. And while I did not see any faces, I saw the humanity that day behind this legal issue. And as I thought about tonight, as we go out over these next few weeks, I'm reminded of the story that Jesus told of those that He welcomed into the kingdom of God. And I will read it to you right here. And it says to them, "For I was hungry and you gave me something to eat, and I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in, and naked and you clothed me, and I was sick and you visited me in prison and you came to me." And then the righteous will answer and say, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty or give you drink? When did we see you a stranger, invite you in naked or clothed you, or see you sick or in prison?" The king will say to them, "Truly I say to you, the extent you did it to one of the least of mine, even the least of them you did it to me." And then He'll say to those on His left, "Depart, cursed ones, into the eternal fire which has been prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. You were naked, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you did not visit me." Then they themselves also will answer, saying, "Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked or sick or in prison and didn't take care of you?" And He will answer and say, "Truly I say to you, the extent that you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me." And these will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life. And I've never been involved in abortion. I've never counseled a person to abortion. I'm not even sure, my wife could probably correct me, if I've ever known anybody. Yeah, I have known some people that have had some abortions. but not until much, much later. And I could stand in front of the Lord and say, aren't I a great guy? I was never involved in abortion. And He could say, David, you had the opportunity to cast a vote. You had an opportunity to share a word with someone who might prevent someone else from having an abortion. And I really don't want to stand in front of the Lord someday and to say that I didn't do what I could do and didn't take the opportunities that were available to me to save a life. Because we know that lives will be lost. And they're in particular being lost in Tennessee. Because of what our Supreme Court did, we are now the only state in the entire Southeast, starting from West Virginia to Kentucky to Texas and back around, that does not have at least an abortion-specific informed consent law or a waiting period law. And we don't have either one. That's an embarrassment. But because of the lack of those restraints of evil that those other states have, we have become an abortion destination. It would be nice in our state if we were in the top 5 of something other than the percentage of women coming here from out of state to have abortions. But the percentage of women who come from out of state to have abortions here is 3rd highest in the nation. Almost 1 out of every 4 women in Tennessee that have an abortion come from out of state. You see, they can cross the Mississippi River from Arkansas and Mississippi on Saturday morning and have their abortion and go home and escape the restraining influence of the laws in their state. And women come down from Kentucky to Nashville and have their abortions. Because of that ruling, we also have no ability to license and regulate the physician-operated abortion clinics in our state. If you heard of Dr. Kermit Gosnell last year in Philadelphia, convicted of 3 counts of murder, Dr. Gosnell in that state was at least licensed and regulated, though they didn't inspect him. But in Tennessee, our regulations of Dr. Kermit Gosnell's office were ruled unconstitutional. We can't stop women from making the choice, but for gosh sakes, can we not at least make sure it's an informed choice and a safe choice? And that's what Planned Parenthood says they want, so let's give it to them. Let's pass an amendment that would allow us to go back to the legislature and say we are going to have an informed consent. We're not going to have a waiting period law because we want to make sure women have thought through this life-changing decision. And we want to make sure that the doctor is not doing what this Planned Parenthood clinic was doing, operating undoubtedly in an unclean and unsafe manner. Until the day we can abolish abortion, let's at least do all that we can do. Now, the reason that I told in part those stories as I thought of this and as I listened to Dr. Grant is because I want to encourage us to not see this as a political issue. Yes, it is an issue in the political arena, but it is a human issue. It is an issue of human beings. It is an issue of women who come in, who are frightened and who are scared and need to know what their options are. Who need to know that there are those who will work with them to raise that child or to make an adoption plan for that child. And of course, there are the unborn. So let me encourage you to get involved in this issue, not because it's a political matter, but because it is a matter of loving the least among us. Now let me also disabuse you of any notion that, well, in Tennessee, this is a slam dunk thing because we're a pro-life state. I mean, look at our congressional leaders. They're all pro-life. Our governor's pro-life. Our legislature's pro-life. The state's pro-life, according to the polls. Well, after one game, the Titans were a good football team. sound so good. My point in telling that story is simply this: that in Tennessee, a majority does not carry the day. In fact, we can get 100% of the votes for a constitutional amendment, and it will fail. And we have had amendments that get a majority of the votes and fail. And that's because we have to get a minimum number of votes. That minimum number of votes is tied to the number of votes that will be cast in the governor's election. Whether you vote for Charlie Brown, whether you vote for Bill Haslam, or whether you write in Linus. Get a little joke there. That just came to me. Maybe I ought to stick to things that I've written down. But anyway, Linus, Charlie Brown, or Governor Haslam, and that is not a comment about Governor Haslam, okay? That he's one of the three cartoon people. So I better just get off of that before I go much further with that. Aren't you glad that I'm not running for office again? But it's tied to the number of votes. So regardless of who you vote for, they will total up those votes, they will divide them in half, and they will add one to it. And that's how many votes we have to have. If if 1 million people vote the governor's race, we have to get 500,000 votes, half plus one, 500,001 votes. If we get 500,000 votes and they get one, we lose. We lose. Now, to put those in numbers that are more easily manageable and to give you a picture of the historical facts regarding elections in Tennessee, let's just assume 10 people vote the governor's race to keep the numbers more manageable. We know that generally about 7% of the folks don't get to the end of the ballot. They just don't get there, or for whatever reason, they don't vote. So in that hypothetical, assume 10 people vote the governor's race, but really only 9 vote on the amendment. I have to have 6 votes. That's half of 10 plus 1, right? So 9 people vote on the amendment, and you think, oh good, I got to get half. Oh, 5, would that work? No, I still have to get 6. Well, what if only 8 people vote on the amendment because they don't understand it? I've got to get 6. Well, what if only 5 vote on the amendment, David? Well, in that case, I can't win at all. Every person who goes in and votes for the governor and then skips the amendment has voted no, and they don't realize it. And this amendment was written by lawyers. I'm being one of them, but it was written by lawyers to make sure that it was worded right. And there are many who will read it and not understand it. And they will skip it. And so they need to know from you to vote for it.
Yes.
It's not sufficient, and if you're a pastor that's here, it's not sufficient to say, get up and vote your conscience, because I'm afraid people won't know what their conscience is telling them when they read it. Okay? So we're going to have to educate folks so that we don't wind up on election day with the majority of the votes, but not the minimum number of votes. And let me also just suggest to you that for those of you who care about this and other issues, I believe that this has ramifications politically beyond the issue of abortion and beyond the state of Tennessee. Because already in politics, and even in our own state, among some of our own Republican legislators, they don't like to talk about these issues of religious liberty, the homosexual agenda, abortion, sex education, and all of those things. Trust me, they don't. I lobby them. And at the national level, it's even worse. So if in Tennessee, the buckle of the Bible Belt, the home of the Southern Baptist Convention, and the Church of God, and dominated by Church of Christ, we can't pass an amendment that just simply says there's nothing in the Constitution about abortion, do you not think that will be used everywhere to say, see, we need to stay away from these issues? And when we say, yeah, but we got a majority, they'll say, well, that's just the point, Fowler. People don't care enough to get the minimum votes. It's just not an issue for them. It's important that we win, not just for the sake of our own state and for those women and for those children who will be going into abortion clinics here. But in order to say to our politicians in this state and to say to those across the nation, these issues do matter. They are important. So let me just close real briefly by suggesting that you do exactly what Dr. Brent Bowles said. That you get a list of people that you can talk to. Friends. I mean, don't assume that because they go to your church they know about it. Most likely they don't. Now, that's not true of every church, but it's true of a lot. Somebody just recently spoke to the board of a large crisis pregnancy center within Tennessee and had members of the board of the crisis pregnancy center who had not heard about this issue. Who called their pastor to say, have you heard about this? So don't assume that the good Christian friend buddy of yours that you play golf with or you eat lunch with or that's in your bridge club knows about this issue. Make sure they know about this issue. Encourage them to tell their friends about it. If we just get the pro-life community to the polls, we do win. If they get to the polls and they know what they're doing and they don't read it and go, what lawyer wrote this? It's good. Give some money if you can. They've already said in the newspaper they'll spend $4 million. That's their budget. And I will tell you as a politician, you don't announce what your budget is unless you're willing to meet it or exceed it. If they say they'll spend 4, they'd probably spend more. So we do need your financial support for Yes on One. We have advertisements in the can. We bought 4 weeks worth of advertising, but we need to buy more. Because early voting will go back, before that 4 weeks. And then pray. Pray and pray, and when you finish praying, pray again. That God will raise up ministers who will be willing to speak about this issue.
Yes, yes.
And that the other people in this room will all do their thing and find their 10 or 15 friends. Go to the website and buy a bumper sticker. We don't give them away. Somebody has to pay for them. So if you want to live in a socialized country where somebody pays for your bumper stickers, go somewhere else. But we live in a free enterprise system. Buy your bumper sticker. At Yes on One, they'll send it to you. Get you a button or a sticker. Wear it. They're t-shirts. They're lovely pink ones. They're gray ones for the guys, so don't sweat it. And wear your t-shirts when you can, where you can. Get a yard sign. We have some yard signs here tonight. And, if you're willing to help pay for them, I don't know what they cost. What do they cost to buy them on the website? $3. So if you have $3, the guys that have them, give them $3. If you don't, take one. But don't take one if you're going to put it in the backseat of your car. Okay, that doesn't help. So do those things, if you would. So with that, Larry, I think I've covered what I need to cover. Is there something anybody can think of that I've not covered? Wait. Yeah.
When we